The Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 31. The bloodied Qin Feng, the smitten Jiang Zuqing, the curious celestial being, the appreciative Lin Xuan. Everyone, though silent, wanted to know who this powerful purple-robed youth was. In the muted hall, everyone's gaze fell onto Su Yu. Su Yu felt a little pressured. He took out his token and tossed it towards Jiang Zishi. It was a pure silver token, laced with traces of gold. Jiang Zishi felt as though he was struck by lightning as he saw the words inscribed on it. He could not believe what he was seeing. "You are the Silver King, Su Yu," Jiang Zishi remarked in disbelief. The image of the weak pauper in his mind was gradually overlapping with the elegant, mysterious purple-robed figure he saw before him. He had always found the purple-robed youth familiar. It was only now, when the images overlapped, when he had his eureka moment. The purple-robed youth was the Silver King, Su Yu. The expressions of the gold students changed. Impossible. He could a mere Silver King have defeated the newly crowned Gold King? That is the current Silver King, Su Yu. How is that possible? It was as though a heavy hammer hit the silver students. Chen Tianan and Xuan Lefei were dumbfounded. This mysterious, elegant and powerful purple-robed youth was the Silver King Su Yu. However, upon associating the two, they were convinced that he indeed was Su Yu. In the seats of the esteemed guests, Yi Xuan exhaled. What? It's him. Impossible. A month ago he was merely at the peak of level 2. But now he can already defeat the Gold King. A spark shone across the eyes of Xuanhuan. He slipped into a momentary daze, before letting out a large laugh. Great. Great. What a Silver King, hiding his abilities. He used his status as Silver King to overcome the Gold King. This is indeed the first in the history of the Institute. At the gathering point of the 10 great demon students, the celestial being abruptly stood up, astonishment written on her face. Her lips formed an exaggerated O, then shockingly mumbled, "How can it be him?" In her experience, Su Yu's arrow technique was top-notch, and his talent for cultivation was decent, but how could he surprise her that much? The thick-browed youth let out a laugh and slapped his head. Ha ha, turns out it was Su Yu, the silver student, in the depository of Buddhist scriptures the other day. His transformation was a little too big, wouldn't you say? The silver-haired youth creased his brows, then arrogantly spat, "So it's that silver trash. He wouldn't last a hit." But the celestial being in the thick-browed youth could tell that the silver-haired youth was more shocked than angry. It seemed that the performance Su Yu displayed just now was enough to put him into disarray. Qin Feng was dumbfounded. He stripped his bloodied robe, finding the situation funny and laughable. The trash that could not withstand a blow from him, in his eyes, had fairly bested him in battle and judged him too weak. Qin Feng was dumbfounded. He could not accept this harsh reality. Jiang Zuqing was lost. She could not comprehend the situation. She had maintained her smile and was still visibly excited. Only now, her features were frozen as though she was a flower in winter. In the moment, her thumping maiden heart was cold as an ice spring. Finally, she shook her head, vehemently rejecting what she saw in front of her. No, he is not. How could he be Su Yu? The person I abandoned. Jiang Zuqing felt as though she was dreaming. She had heartlessly abandoned the person that loved her in search of a man of higher status. Today, she had finally found the person she loved, the person suited for her. However, she had just found out that this person was the man she had so coldly abandoned. The contrast between then and now. The laughable karma. Jiang Zuqing felt as though she was dreaming. What was even more laughable was the fact that he, in the past, had been deeply in love with her. The silence turned into a wave of fanfare. He's lying. How could he be Su Yu? They are completely different. Impossible. The gap in abilities between the Silver King and the Gold King should be immense. Jiang Zishi exhaled. The brat the junior duke had wanted to deal with had already risen to the level of the Gold King. He knew that he could no longer lay a finger on Su Yu. Such glaring talent would be cultivated by the school as a reserve for the demon students. He would no longer be under Jiang Zishi's sphere of influence. When the students had finally accepted the fact that this elegant, mysterious purple-robed youth was indeed the Silver King, countless calls of respect and admiration were heard. They knew that from this day onward, Su Yu would shoot to the top. There was no longer anyone who could put him down. He would be a legend within the Institute. He was a Silver King, but had overcome the Gold King, a legend unsurpassable by any other. Chia Lingxuan let out a large laugh. Great. 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 We have another genius in our institute. Level 4 lower tier defeating a level 4 upper tier. His innate talent was close to that of the 10 great demon students. Rumble. At that moment, the doors of the hall were forcefully opened. 20 black armor guards stormed into the hall with bloodlust, forming 2 lines along the sides of the entrance, respectfully awaiting the entrance of a prominent figure. Black armor guards from the Duke's abode. The expression on Chia Lingxuan's face changed. Xuanhuan also felt that something bad was about to happen. The Duke of Xuanhu was one of the 3 dukes that held actual power within the Fenglan Empire and had considerable influence within the court. His cultivation base was level 6 of the martial path, and had cultivated people of level 5 of the martial path under him. The black armor guards were those that he cultivated. In the Xuanhu prefecture, the black armor guards were an imposing presence. 100 strong, even people who were level 7 of the martial path had to show some form of respect. The Duke had incredible influence in the empire. No one dared offend him. Fang Yun wrinkled his brows. Even he had to be cautious around a member of the royal family. The royal family was descendants of the Holy King. In other words, the Holy King was once a backseat ruler. How could Fang Yun afford to offend a descendant of the Holy King? Chia Lingxuan, wearing a grave expression, made his way down hastily. He expectantly looked towards the handsome middle-aged man, as if an emperor had descended into the realm of the masses. Duke of Xuanhu, what prompts your sudden arrival? Chia Lingxuan was curious. He was on good terms with the Duke of Xuanhu. Barging into his institute, not saving him face, seemed out of character for the Duke of Xuanhu. The Duke of Xuanhu looked as he usually did, but his eyes nursed a raging fire. He suppressed his anger, cupped his hands, and with a stern, deep voice, said, "My apologies for bothering you, Lord Chia. I am here for someone. A month ago, I had issued a warrant for him, and I have been informed that he was a student from this institute. In order to prevent the information from leaking out and giving him a chance to escape, I had to make the first move." Chia Lingxuan heaved a small sigh of relief. He had heard that the Duke had issued a manhunt for a genius of arrow techniques for the past month. To think that this fugitive had been hiding in his institute for the past month. "My Duke, do you know the identity of the person? I would gladly assist in the capture of this person." Chia Lingxuan's gaze turned cold. The Duke of Xuanhu was a righteous man. Any person who he had issued a warrant for must have committed an unpardonable crime. From behind, the Duke squeezed in a petite beauty. She had a sharp chin, baby doll eyes, and skin as white as snow, similar to a porcelain doll. The young princess, dressed in a yellow dress, angrily wrinkled her nose. "His name is Su Yu. This perverted baddie. We have come to arrest him. Where is he?" It turned out that the Duke had been searching the entire town after he received the clue of the fiery lion. Coincidentally, Li Minghao had been questioned. What was even more of a coincidence was that he was in the shop that day, and after a round of questioning, immediately revealed that that man selling the fiery lion was indeed the Silver King Su Yu. Just like that, the identity of the person that violated the young princess was made known to the world. The gaze of the hall shifted to the purple-robed youth standing on the stage. The genius who bested the Gold King as a Silver King. The crowd was lost and unable to comprehend the situation. Some were even gloating. Qin Feng let out an evil laugh. "You cannot live with the sins you have committed. You, in the end, still lost utterly." Jiang Zuqing was dumbfounded for the longest time, still unable to associate the pauper Su Yu with the purple-robed youth. Unexplainably, her heart relaxed a great deal after hearing that the Duke of Xuanhu had issued a warrant for Su Yu. "Su Yu, this is the best fate for you. A person of such little power and influence, no matter how flashy, would ultimately meet the same end." Jiang Zuqing thought to herself as she looked away from the purple-robed figure. The celestial being could not believe it. The person who violated the young princess was Su Yu. Her steps were dainty as flowers, her body weightless. She flew to the door and pleaded, "Uncle, is there a mistake?" The Duke did not answer. The young princess, however, pulled on the celestial being, nagging into her ears, "HMPH. There's no mistake. The fire dragon skin armor you're wearing belongs to that person. The young princess hit her fair forehead, apparently enlightened. Oh. This is also the person who saved you. Sister Jingyu, he definitely took advantage of you while you were in a coma. This perverted man. The young princess covered her little mouth, her large eyes staring wildly, then flailed her dainty fists and exclaimed, I will never forgive him. Rumble. The celestial being had a eureka moment. It's him. It's really him. The star-like eyes. The familiar eyes she saw before she slipped into a coma were really Su Yu's. Feelings of relief and gratitude welled up within her. Uncle, I plead for your wise judgment, he did indeed save the young princess. The celestial being pleaded at the Duke of Xuanhu. The Duke of Xuanhu faced a dilemma. He was an impartial man. Su Yu had saved his daughter, and naturally should be rewarded. But he had also violated her. The Duke could not arrive at a decision. His only thought was to be accountable for his daughter, to at least give his daughter closure, so as to prevent a trauma which would disrupt her martial path. Jia Lingxuan was surprised. His daughter, though calm, was immensely proud. He had never seen her ask for a favor. My duke, is there a misunderstanding? Jia Lingxuan felt pity for such a genius. The Duke of Xuanhu slowly shook his head, and with a cold stare said, Guards, arrest Su Yu. The Duke was stubborn and no one could stop him. The celestial being grew anxious, lightly biting her lips. She made her way beside Fang Qingzhu, putting up with the humiliation in her heart, and pleaded, Fang Qingzhu, could you ask your father to protect him? In the hall, only Fang Yun could stop the Duke of Xuanhu. As proud as she was, she had to ask for a favor from a beast that had tried to take advantage of herself in the past. She was utterly humiliated. To her surprise, Fang Qingzhu's gaze was already ice cold. It was the first time he saw that Jia Jingyu had fallen for somebody else. In the entire hall, the only person pleading for mercy for Su Yu was the celestial being. The Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 32. Fine, he coldly answered. Fang Qingzhu leapt on stage and whispered into his father's ear. Fang Yun's expression remained solemn, glancing over to Su Yu. He took a moment for deliberation. After considering, he coldly uttered, It is the duty of martial arts training institutes to gather talents from all over the land. Individuals of questionable character naturally have no place here. I, with my powers as an inspector, announce that Su Yu is hereby expelled. From now on, he is no longer a student of the Xuanhu Prefecture Martial Arts Training Institute. Expelled. The crowd exhaled. The most severe punishment a martial arts training institute can give out is expulsion. This was equal to destroying Su Yu's future. It would be impossible for him to make a comeback. The martial arts training institutes established by the empire are he cradle for cultivating talents. There was no other comparable path. Jia Lingxuan protested, Please reconsider, Inspector Fang. To be able to overcome the Gold King. This man's potential is limitless. Fang Yun calmly said, A person's talent might be important, but so are their morals. There is no place in the Xuanhu Martial Arts Training Institute for a person who has committed such an unpardonable crime. The Duke of Xuanhu was startled. He glanced over at Su Yu and thought to himself, beating the Gold King at the age of 14. He had a stroke of inspiration, but his expression did not change. Fang Yun saw that Jia Lingxuan was still indignant, and wanted to protest further, thus silencing him. HMPH. You dare defy my orders. Jia Lingxuan was furious, but he could not do anything about the situation. He could only follow the orders of the sanctuary. He let out a sigh, feeling pity in his for the loss of a genius. The crowd was silent. The celestial being, her eyes full of hatred, glared intently at Fang Qingzhu, who was wearing a sly smile. She knew that her pleas had achieved the opposite effect. She opened her mouth, wishing to continue pleading with the Duke of Xuanhu. At that moment, Su Yu's expression was that of gratitude. He laughed, Fairy, my life is not worth much. You do not need to plead for me anymore. The celestial being's nubile body shuddered. She was feeling deeply indignant for Su Yu. He was kind-hearted enough to save the young princess. Why has this fate befallen him? He had had a hard time establishing his reputation, only to have his prospects cut off, potentially facing a lifetime in jail. But you. Su Yu lightly waved his hands, his gaze locked on the horizon. He let out a sigh. A helpless sigh. An indignant sigh. A somewhat satisfied sigh. Forget it. My life was not worth anything. Now that I've had my moment of glory, I feel content. I was fated to die 3 months ago. To be able to live till today was already a miracle. With a laugh, Su Yu said, I was lonely, weak and poor all my life, truly worthy of being abandoned by my lover. But at the lowest point of my life, you gifted me a bow. I shall forever remember this act of charity. Fortunately, I have returned this favor during my time at the Twilight Mountains. My only regret is that I have yet to know your name. The celestial being shuddered. Her gift of pity on that day was returned with such immense gratitude. Why must someone like Su Yu meet his end this early into his life? The celestial being teared up, lips wavering, announced, Jingyu. Chia Jingyu. Chia Jingyu. Still rain of the summertime. Su Yu rambled with a smile on his face, a radiant face with beautiful eyes, a beautiful name for a beautiful person. There is nothing holding me back anymore. I no longer have any regrets. The celestial being, Chia Jingyu, slumped her shoulders as grief overcame her. The celestial being hated her powerlessness. She hated the unjust world. Why had fate dealt Su Yu such a cruel blow? Unexplainably, the hearts of many people resonated with her as they watched on. Was Su Yu saying goodbye to this world? Jiang Zuqing put her hands together, pain welling up her chest. Su Yu, in his moment of demise, only had Chia Jingyu in his heart. There wasn't a single trace of her. They had been together for 10 years, but in his heart, she was incomparable to a bow. He had really gotten over me. A deep disappointment and a profound loneliness gripped her. A bout of grief was born. The deepest form of loneliness was not physical separation, it was being forgotten. The Su Yu she had abandoned did not move far away from her but instead chose to forget her. A silent grief blanketed her heart. Duke of Xuanhuan. Su Yu turned to face the Duke. His face was calm, without hatred. You can choose to be ungrateful and spare a thought for your daughter. But it will not be that easy to capture me. The Duke of Xuanhuan's face remained solemn and did not speak. The young princess of Xuanhuan gently bit her lips. She had a deep crease on her nose, pulling on the Duke's sleeve, whining, forget it, father. They make me look like the bad guy instead. The Duke of Xuanhuan remained impassive. He looked over to Chia Lingxuan and callously said, you should be responsible since he was a student in your institute. Capture him and I shall issue his punishment. You with the surname Su. It turns out it was you that day in the Twilight Mountains. Fang Qingzhu's eyes were filled with hatred. From Su Yu's words, he realized that the person who had foiled his plans and saved Chia Jingyu was Su Yu. Qin Feng leapt to the stage. Together with Fang Qingzhu, they unleashed a pincer attack on Su Yu. 2 generations of Gold Kings working together to suppress the Silver King. Su Yu was not mad, instead laughed, ha ha. Come at me. Kneel. Both Fang Qingzhu and Qin Feng lashed out. Rumble. Continuous 8 trigram finger. Fang Qingzhu's fingers weaved as quick as lightning. Rumble. Monumental Buddha's palm. Qin Feng's palm was forceful and unpredictable. Su Yu's star-like eyes shone brilliantly. Diabolic piercing stare. From Su Yu's eyes shot out a formless ripple, penetrating the brain of Fang Qingzhu. Ah! Fang Qingzhu wrapped his hands around his head and let out a pathetic howl. A broad fist connected with Fang Qingzhu's face, knocking multiple teeth out of his mouth. He flew back, face bloodied. The power behind the fist was immense. Fang Qingzhu tumbled down the stage, fainting from his heavy wounds. Qin Feng seized the opportunity and struck with his palm. He was confident in trapping Su Yu, for he had lasted 100 rounds against him previously. Tempest. Su Yu utilized his vital energy. This was the first time he was incorporating his vital energy into his techniques. Qin Feng's palm broke in that split second, the immense power impacting his organs. He vomited blood and flew backwards, immediately entering a coma. In the time it took to take a breath, both the Gold Kings had been defeated. Ah! The crowd exhaled. Chia Lingxuan, Yi Xuan, Fang Yun and even the Duke of Xuanhuan all had a look of shock on their face. A Sliver King making such quick work of 2 generations of Gold Kings. Just how powerful is Su Yu? So this is Su Yu's true ability. He did not show everything he had in the previous match with Qin Feng. Such power. Fang Yun's expression turned grave. What are you waiting for, Jiang Zishi? Capture that rebel. Jiang Zishi was dumbfounded for a moment. After he managed a reaction, his eyes filled with caution and fear. This man's potential was too great. He should not be allowed to remain. Challenging the authorities. Your punishment would be more severe should you dare to continue resisting. Jiang Zishi let out an angry howl. His aura at the peak of level 4 of the martial path blanketed the arena. This scene was strikingly similar to that during the silver assessment. It was the same abuse of power. The same heartlessness. The only difference was that this was no longer the Suyu of the past. Get lost, old fogey. A dark glimmer shone across Suyu's cold eyes. Ray a diabolic light. A black light materialized and shot out. Ah! Jiang Zishi could not react in time and was hit at close distance. The ray a diabolic light was a dangerous technique, for it impacts the soul of its enemies. In the best case, it injures the soul of the enemy. In the worst case, the enemy dies. In an ordinary fight, Suyu would hesitate to use the technique. A tormented howl broke forth from the lips of Jiang Zishi. Thud. Tempest. Suyu landed a kick on the old man's face. As if in a boat collision, Jiang Zishi bled from his forehead, falling to the ground with his fate unknown. The crowd was in uproar. Jiang Zishi, a judge who was at the peak of level 4 of the martial path, had been defeated in one strike. After overcoming the 2 gold kings, he had managed to defeat the powerful Jiang Zishi. Everyone thought that they were dreaming. The Silver King was literally defying fate. Chen Tianan's face was pale, his expression surprised. Ray a diabolic light. How could it be? I trained for 3 years. How long did he train for? Furthermore, the power behind his technique was at least triple mine. Fang Yun, Xia Lingxuan and the Duke of Xianyu were in a state of disbelief. To think that he would manage to attain stage 2 of the demonic eyes. If this is the case, wouldn't he be a rare prodigy of souls? A prodigy of souls was the most mysterious and terrifying kind of martial artist. They could kill without a trace and had unfathomable abilities. They were geniuses that many would fight to cultivate. However, these people had to be born with such abilities. They cannot be nurtured through practice, making them extremely rare. For example, Chen Tianan, a prodigy of souls with decent talent, was the only one of his kind in the Xianyu Prefecture Martial Arts Training Institute. To think that Suyu was also a prized prodigy of souls. Xia Lingxuan shot a look of surprise at Fang Yun. A student of such caliber had to be expelled from his institute. The institute would definitely become a laughingstock in the future. The sparkle in the Duke of Xianyu's eyes brightened. Xia Jingyu shared her surprise with the young princess of Xianyu. Jiang Zuqing also had her mouth open. Suyu was too powerful. Fang Yun had an awful look on his face, for it was him who announced the expulsion of Suyu. In the end, the display of Suyu's talent and ability had lost him face. He had to capture Suyu fast. However, as he opened his mouth to speak, a silver trash dares to be so insolent. A silver-haired youth leapt to the stage, his body ice-cold. Xia Jingyu was as surprised as the thick-browed youth. What are you doing, Xiao Li? The silver-haired youth rose with his hands behind his back, frost gathering under his eyes. I can't stand a silver trash being so arrogant in front of my eyes, polluting my sights. The crowd caused a commotion. The silver-haired Xiao Li, ranked 4th of the Institute's 10 great demon students. His talent is terrifying. This man is far too arrogant. How detestable. Even the demon student made a move. This proved Suyu's abilities to be powerful indeed. Xia Jingyu stood up at the thought of flying over but was blocked by the thick-browed youth. He smiled and said he had once declared Suyu as trash. But now Suyu had become unexpectedly strong. Only by going up and defeating Suyu can he regain his face. There is no need to stop him. Suyu might not lose too horribly. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 33. Suyu stood with his hands behind his back, observing his opponent. The silver-haired youth was about 17. He had a recollection of the day in the depository. The silver-haired youth thought that the presence of a silver student was polluting the environment, then turned to leave. Even now, he thought that the presence of Suyu was polluting his line of sight. His level of arrogance was the same as his. However, he had the right to be this arrogant. His abilities were at level 5 lower tier of the martial path, and he was ranked 4th in the 10 great demon students, slightly lower than that of Chia Jingyu. If you think that I am polluting your line of sight, you are free to close your eyes or blind yourself, no one is stopping you. Su Yu calmly said. The youth's expression was cold. Make your move. Do not waste my time with your blabber, silver trash. Su Yu smiled, but did not say a word. Level 5 of the martial path was powerful indeed. Since he had dared to step onto the stage, he must be confident in dealing with the likes of the ray of diabolic light. His ability Tempest had not reached stage 3. While it was effective in dealing with level 4s, it would stand no chance against a level 5. It looks like his only choice was to use that move. You dirty trash. I let you have the first move, and yet you hesitate. You no longer have the chance to strike. The silver-haired youth felt as though standing on the same stage as Su Yu was sullying himself. He lashed out. Star-destroying finger. An advanced level technique was displayed. His fingers circled, as if tracing the orbits of planets. It was radiant and unfathomable. An untamable gale, coated with terrifying vital energy, trembled its very surroundings. Rumble. The attack of his finger brought forth a heavy pressure to its surroundings. Su Yu did not move, his star-like eyes captivated. A unique rhythm enveloped his body. He was the same person, but it was as though he had become one with nature. It was as if he had become one with his surroundings. Like a painting, Su Yu's presence faded. He became like a character in a painting. Fang Yun's cool smirk turned into a grave expression. Chia Lingxuan squinted. Xuanhuan could not believe what he was seeing and broke into bouts of heavy breathing. The Duke of Xuanyu's eyes displayed a show of excitement. Chia Jingyu covered her mouth. This is. The thick-browed youth exhaled. Out of the 10 great demon students, only the top could use this. The Holy Decree. The Holy Decree was one of the prerequisites to entering the realm of the Holy King. There were many who cultivated themselves to level 6, 7, 8 and even 9 but were unable to attain the Holy Decree, never fated to enter the realm of the Holy King. For example, of those who were present, Fang Yun, Chia Lingxuan, and even the Duke of Xuanyu were unable to gain insight into the Holy Decree. It is only with incredible perception, such as those found in demon students, who could gain insight into the technique. Out of the 10 great demon students, only the top had gained insight to the basics of the technique. The rest of them had not been able to. The Holy Decree, sought after by tens of thousands of top-notch martial artists, had been displayed by a 14-year-old, a junior of only level 4 of the martial path. Everyone was shocked. To be able to attain the Holy Decree was to hold a key to the doors to the Holy King. As long as Su Yu continued to grow, he had the potential to be the next generation's Holy King. Atop the stage, Xiao Li attacked with his finger, suddenly realizing the change in the temperament of his opponent. A bout of uneasiness enveloped him. The heavenly finger. Su Yu immersed himself in the state the elder in the wall painting was in, striving to achieve the same state of mind as him. He involuntarily moved his finger. This finger was ordinary, without gimmicks or magnificence. The air in the surroundings, however, danced wildly, gathering towards the finger. Nature's rhythm and its unparalleled awe were clearly displayed at the tip of his finger. Everyone in the audience was captivated, faintly feeling more in tune with the flow of nature. Su Yu moved his finger through the air. Xiao Li was still 3 meters away. But his advanced technique, the star-destroying finger, was countered. Whoosh! Xiao Li violently threw up blood, a new bloody gash forming on his chest. He flew backwards, heavily landing below the stage. His arrogant eyes were etched with shock. Su Yu kept his finger, his gaze gradually becoming clear. He had a small enlightenment, gaining further insight into the technique. At the same time, the purple star thunderbolt that he had had so much trouble understanding became much clearer. Perhaps with a little more cultivation he could start using it at the beginner level. Unfortunately, he did not have the time to start cultivating the technique. With his hands behind his back he made his way to the edge of the stage. From the higher vantage point, he looked down at the bloodied Xiao Li, calmly shaking his head. You really are part of the 10 great demon students. You hang the words, silver trash, in your mouth, and I thought you were really powerful. But you are not even at the level of silver, such weakness. Xiao Li angrily threw up another round of blood before slipping into a coma. He was immensely proud, but he had lost to a silver trash. The audience was dead silent. Xiao Li, who was ranked 4th in the 10 great demon students, could not take a single stroke of Su Yu's technique. Countless people held their breath as they looked at Su Yu's purple silhouette. It was as if they saw an unbeatable battle figure. Jiang Zuqing was in a daze, her mind blank as a sheet. She actually abandoned a student of the caliber of a demon student. Jia Jingyu and the thick-browed youth were equally dumbfounded. Yi Xuan's breathing was hurried. He clenched his fists and anxiously reminded, "Lord, we cannot tolerate this any longer." Fang Yun, in order to save face, would definitely get rid of this genius who has the potential to be the Holy King. How could we condone this mistake? Jia Lingxuan had the same intentions. Inspector Fang, please reconsider his expulsion. If he did not commit any major mistakes, there is no need for the expulsion. How could he give up on a genius that had gained insight into the holy decree? Fang Yun's expression changed, his face turned fiery hot. He stared at his son with a hint of criticism. If not for his son, how would he have the heart to expel such a genius? As an inspector, the performance of the Xianyu Prefecture Martial Arts Training Institute was of grave significance to him. He would definitely become a laughing stock if he got rid of a genius who had gained insight into the holy decree. But he had already announced the Su Yu's expulsion to everyone. To retract his orders would invite mockery by everyone. After much contemplation, he decided that only by killing Su Yu could he save his reputation. The Duke of Xianyu had come all guns blazing anyway. The Duke of Xianyu would not object to killing Su Yu here. Finalizing his plan, Fang Yun rose from his seat. He put on a show of impartiality and howled, "Insolence! Instead of surrendering, you heavily injure the students of the institute. I, as an inspector, cannot forgive you." Rumble. Vital energy of terrifying proportions broke through the atmosphere from meters away, shooting towards Su Yu. Only a level 7 of the martial path could release his vital energy outwardly. There was no escape for Su Yu. Su Yu let out a groan. He could no longer continue the battle. No. Jia Jingyu had tears in her eyes. She escaped her binds and flew over to the stage. The young princess of Xianyu's face turned red with worry. "No. I did not have the intention to kill him. Please stop." Countless onlookers sighed in their hearts. A genius who had just displayed his powers was going to be struck down like that. In the moment of crisis, a gust of energy shot forward. While it was incomparable to the vital energy of Fang Yun, it did manage to alter the path of the bloodthirsty vital energy Fang Yun had released. Rumble. The vital energy grazed past Su Yu and hit an unoccupied seat in the spectating area, turning it into dust. If that had hit Su Yu, he definitely would have been obliterated. Whoosh. At that moment, a person flew to the stage and stood in front of Su Yu. This person was not Jia Lingxuan, nor was he Yi Xuan. It was the Duke of Xianyu. The person who wanted Su Yu dead was the Duke of Xianyu. But now, the person saving Su Yu was also the Duke of Xianyu. The crowd was perplexed. Even Jia Lingxuan and Yi Xuan could not comprehend the situation. Fang Yun froze for a moment, then politely asked, "Duke of Xianyu, what is the purpose of this?" "I am helping you capture this rebel." Ha ha. The Duke of Xianyu let out a large laugh towards the heavens. He turned with a sparkle in his eyes, then cordially put his hands on Su Yu's shoulder, his face full of vitality. "It is I who lacked consideration, causing this misunderstanding. Su Yu is my prospective son-in-law. To put out a warrant for him was a bad idea indeed." Son-in-law, the son-in-law of the Duke of Xianyu. The entire hall was flabbergasted. They could not react to this wild turn of events. Just previously, the Duke of Xianyu had been issuing a manhunt, threatening to kill. And now, he announces that Su Yu is his son-in-law. The Duke of Xianyu maintained a calm expression and said, "My daughter and Su Yu were brought together by fate. My daughter has not been able to forget your help in saving her life. I, as her father, could only come up with the idea of a manhunt to search for Su Yu amongst the thousands of people in the city. Luckily, we have finally found you." The Duke of Xianyu was incredibly joyful, patting Su Yu's shoulders and harboring a smile. "Su Yu. My daughter is smitten over you, do not disappoint her." Su Yu felt as though he was struck by lightning. He had thought that he wouldn't be able to escape death. To think that there was such a turn of events. Soon, Su Yu understood. In the beginning, the Duke of Xianyu had really wanted to capture him. However, after he had discovered his talent, he took advantage of the situation and changed his stance, using the excuse of finding a son-in-law to keep Su Yu for himself. Fortune follows after surviving an adversity. Su Yu thought quickly. His performance today had been stunning. Qin Feng and Fang Qingzhu would definitely think of ways to get rid of him. The Martial Arts Training Institute had no way of protecting him. With Fang Yun's influence, even Qie Lingxuan and Yi Xuan, as much as they wanted to, could not do anything. This was evident in that series of events. Only the Duke of Xianyu, a member of the royal family, could provide a backing. This way, even Fang Yun or the Duke of Qin could not touch him. Su Yu did not have a choice. Who am I to receive such grace from the Duke and the young princess? Su Yu put on a show of humility. The Duke of Xianyu put his hands together and laughed. Ha ha, you've attained the holy decree and have the possibility of becoming the holy king. Such a dragon among men is naturally worthy of my daughter. Great. Since this is the case, I shall take it that you accept. In half a month, we shall hold a wedding for you and my daughter. The Duke of Xianyu was joyful. He looked around and said, when the time comes, I hope that all of you will attend. The young princess of Xianyu was dumbfounded, pointing at her own nose in her daze. What? I cannot get over Su Yu. What? They are going to hold a wedding for me. This perverted man is going to be my fiancé. The young princess of Xianyu angrily pouted her lips, loudly shouting, I. Her servant, Shaozi, shot her a look, hurriedly covering the young princess's mouth, softly whispering in her ear, young princess, don't cause a ruckus, or the duke will be embarrassed. Shaozi turned her gaze to Su Yu on the stage. He was suave and had incredible ability. She was envious. The young princess was really lucky. In a strange twist of fate, she had managed to get herself such a capable husband. The future holy king. How many girls could only dream of marrying someone like that? The young princess did not know a blessing when she saw one. If only she was the young princess. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 34. The young princess was livid, but she was weak, easily suppressed by Shaozi. Fang Yun's expression was dreadful. He could no longer lay a finger on Su Yu. Qie Lingxuan reacted slowly. He cursed him in his heart. The Duke of Xianyu had obviously changed his mind after discovering the talent Su Yu possessed. Duke of Xianyu. So it was all a misunderstanding. Since Su Yu did not make any mistakes, we at the Martial Arts Training Institute cannot press any charges and should retract the punishment. Su Yu is still a student of our institute. Qie Lingxuan was not stupid. He wanted Su Yu back in the institute. How could the Duke of Xianyu accept such an arrangement? No worries. Su Yu will receive much better care and resources in my abode. I will cultivate Su Yu's talent with all my heart. Lord Qie, you do not need to work. What the Duke of Xianyu meant was that the Martial Arts Training Institute was not a large enough vessel to cultivate the world-class talent Su Yu possessed. The Duke of Xianyu would not allow such talent to be buried within the Training Institute. Qie Lingxuan opened his mouth, wishing to protest. After observing the situation, Su Yu came just in time to cut in. He took a deep bow towards Qie Lingxuan and Yi Xuan, then gratefully said, thank you, lords, for your care and concern. I will forever remember this act of benevolence in my heart. However, I wish to climb further, towards higher peaks. I hope that the two of you would allow me to do so. Many in the crowd glanced towards Fang Qingzhu and Qin Feng from time to time. Su Yu would not be able to find protection in the Martial Arts Training Institute. Qin Feng might not be able to exert much influence in the institute, but Fang Qingzhu's father was directly in charge of it. The audience sighed. Such a genius, who would be able to claim glory for the institute, was suppressed, and inevitably had to leave. There was no animosity toward his betrayal, only compassion. Without power and influence, even a genius would find it hard to grow in the institute. A genius might not be able to make it big in the future. But a genius without power or influence is doomed to be suppressed. Both Qie Lingxuan and Yi Xuan sighed, etching their hatred towards Fang Yun in their bones. A genius with the potential to become the Holy King had been chased away by him. Feeling the stares of criticism, Fang Yun could not carry himself in the hall any longer. He shot an evil eye at Su Yu, then turned to leave. Su Yu was surrounded by black armor guards, and escorted out of the hall. From that day on, Su Yu was no longer a student, but the consort of the Xianyu prefecture. Jiang Zuqing stared at the back of Su Yu, her gaze complicated. Influence. Su Yu had obtained it. Jia Jingyu was relieved, barely being able to conceal her smile. The fate between the young princess and Su Yu runs deep. To think that they would become husband and wife. Ha ha. Recalling the event between Su Yu and the young princess, Jia Jingyu had to admit that they were fated for each other. Who would have thought that what had transpired in the Twilight Mountains the other day would eventually lead to such a marriage? The incident in the institute quickly spread throughout the city. The genius that was expelled by the Martial Arts Training Institute was to be the son-in-law of the Duke of Xianyu. This became the topic of conversation for many. Su Yu, as a Silver King, overcame 2 generations of Gold Kings. He severely wounded Jiang Zhishi with a single blow. He defeated Xiao Li, one of the 10 great demon students, in a matter of seconds. These events were unimaginable by the people. The Training Institute's loss of a genius to the Duke of Xianyu became a joke to the community for the distant future. Su Yu lived into the manor of the Duke of Xianyu. The manor was opulent, with an air of royalty lingering in the surroundings. Everyone in the manor, from the duke to the servants, were extremely polite towards Su Yu. Even Li Minghai and Li Jinshan did not dare breathe in the presence of Su Yu. Su Yu felt that he had made it in life. But Su Yu was not immersed in the feeling. He knew that the influence belonged to the Duke of Xianyu. One day, in the study of the Duke. Su Yu, do you have parents at home? We should invite him into the city to discuss the marriage. The Duke of Xianyu was feeling joyful the more he looked at Su Yu. An incredible talent who had attained the holy decree. He had incredible grace and was prim and proper in his appearance. He had a high moral compass. He once saved both his daughter and Jia Jingyu. He was really a dragon among men. One could not have too much of such a talent. Su Yu shook his head. I do not have parents. I was brought up by the streets. Su Yu's parents had died from an epidemic, and he had no family left. Su Yu survived until this day with the help of temples, monasteries and the neighborhood. The Duke of Xianyu let out a quiet sigh. To think that Su Yu had such a tragic story. How about this? I will notify the village of your marriage with Xiana, and exempt him from taxes for the next 10 years, as a sign of gratitude for bringing you up. Xiana was the given name of the young princess. The young princess's surname was Qin, her full name being Qin Xiana. Thank you, my duke. Su Yu expressed his gratitude. While Su Yu did not hold special feelings toward the town of Qingshan, it was after all the place he was born. Su Yu was still grateful that the Duke of Xianyu was willing to take care of the townspeople. What are your plans for the future? The Duke of Xianyu asked Su Yu. Su Yu did not hesitate. He hardened his gaze. I will devote my life to taking the spot as the Holy King. In this cruel world, power was the only way to maintain order. Without power, Su Yu could not enjoy his life in peace. The Duke of Xianyu was pleased with his answer. He was worried that the once poor Su Yu would be satisfied with the luxuries that came with being part of the royal family and lose his way of the martial path. From what he had observed, this seemed far from the case. Great. The Duke of Xianyu bared his heart. In this era, power and influence are fleeting. Only your personal strength is important. For example, if the Holy King was weak, how would he be able to rule over the world? Su Yu resonated with the Duke's words, accepting his teaching with a bow. After a pause, the Duke of Xianyu asked, how big do you think the Xianyu prefecture is? Su Yu was a little shaken. Large without boundaries, an area of countless square miles. There were as many cities as there are hair on a cow's back, with a population of tens of thousands. I, since birth, had never stepped out of the Xianyu prefecture. The area of the Xianyu prefecture was larger than that of ancient China. The Duke of Xianyu gently shook his head. In your eyes the Xianyu prefecture is huge. But do you know that the Xianyu prefecture is but one of 13 prefectures in the Fenglan Empire, and the smallest one at that? Su Yu was overwhelmed. The area of the Xianyu prefecture was larger than that of ancient China, with enough area to include 34 districts. Yet it is the smallest prefecture in the Fenglan Empire. If we add up the area of the 13 prefectures, wouldn't it be larger than the entire planet? The world is a big place. If you wish to become a man above men, you cannot just be satisfied with conquering the Xianyu prefecture. You should set your sights on the entire empire. That is your true stage. The Duke of Xianyu said. Su Yu toned down his shock, a sense of heroism welling within him. The world is large and vast. How could I, Su Yu, be satisfied with what I have now? Su Yu thanked the Duke. Thank you, my Duke, for your teachings. I, Su Yu, will work even harder, and make my name heard throughout the empire. Great. I admire your spirit. The Duke of Xianyu was unbelievably comforted, praising Su Yu deep in his heart. The Duke had not judged Su Yu wrongly. Su Yu was not just a fish in the sea. Well then, I shall give you an opportunity to propel you to a greater stage. The Duke of Xianyu had made up his mind to gift Su Yu an opportunity. Su Yu abruptly lifted his head. A greater stage. The Duke of Xianyu laughed. That's right. A month from now is the Fenglan Empire's holy meet. Demon students from all 13 martial arts training institutes and the royal family will enter a contest and compete to claim the title of the holy talent. I, as a duke of a prefecture, have the right to nominate a person to represent my family. Do you wish to accept this offer? All 13 prefectures, which meant talent from all over the world, in a sparring contest. Su Yu was shocked. I, Su Yu, will never forget your gracious offer. A person who had originally should have been suppressed by Fang Yun and the Duke of Qin. A person whose future should have been totally destroyed. In his darkest hour, he had gained the admiration and protection of the Duke of Xianyu. Now he was given the precious opportunity to advance to a greater stage. This was undoubtedly the turning point of his life. Even though the Duke of Xianyu had a part to play in his expulsion from the institute, he understood that without power and influence, he would be buried within the institute. Fang Qingzhu and Qin Feng would do their all to keep him down. The Duke of Xianyu was relieved. He propped Su Yu up, casually laughing. I have no sons. Xian'er is playful by nature, and has little interest in the martial paths, which is the only regret of mine. The heavens saw this and gifted you to me. This life had been worth living. However, there was something stuck in Su Yu's heart. I will never forget the benevolence you have shown me. However, I would feel uncomfortable until I speak my mind. Ha ha, there is no harm in sharing. The Duke of Xianyu said. Su Yu slowly shared. I have only met the young princess once, and I can tell that she has no feelings for me. Wouldn't this engagement be unfair for her? Su Yu did not want to force the young princess into something she wanted no part of. So, this is it. I thought that you were insecure about your past status. The Duke of Xianyu stopped laughing. To think that Su Yu was worried about this matter. He regained his smile. You do not have to worry. She naturally has to follow her parents' say in her marriage. Furthermore, Xian'er is not pining for anyone. Even if she does not marry you today, she would have to marry someone else some other day. That is the way the royal family works. Xian'er, being part of the royal family, is clear of this. You worry too much. An offspring of the royal family cannot decide on their own marriage. This has been instilled in them since they were young. Su Yu's concern was unwarranted. She was not pining for anyone. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief. If there was someone in the young princess's heart, Su Yu would have stolen the love of another person. Su Yu could not bring himself to do that. If that was the case, then it was of little concern. Similar to how the young princess did not having any feelings for Su Yu, he did not have many feelings for her either. This way, no one was at a disadvantage. If that is the case, then I am relieved. Su Yu laughed wholeheartedly. He then cupped his hands. If there is nothing else, I am going to practice. The battles today were enlightening and I want to take the opportunity to practice. I think that my abilities will improve soon after. The Duke of Xianyu smiled kindly. Then child, ha ha, go and practice. Watching Su Yu hurriedly rush to practice, the Duke of Xianyu was satisfied. He even felt a tinge of regret, for Su Yu wasn't his biological son. But thinking that Su Yu would soon to be his son-in-law, he put it behind him. He leaned back on his chair and rested for a moment. The Duke of Xianyu ordered his servant, prepare the invitations. I want the engagement ceremony between Su Yu and Xiana to be done well and respectable. The servant rushed to prepare, and according to instructions, put together a large list of attendees. The Duke of Xianyu dropped his gaze to the words, first prince, second prince, third prince, and let a crease form across his brows. The second prince and Xiana grew up together, and he had feelings for Xiana outside of brotherly love. I do not wish for him to do anything funny during the ceremony. The Duke of Xianyu rubbed his brows, frustration rising in his heart. In the past, marriage within the royal family had been common. For a royal prince to take a young princess as his wife is common within the Fenglan Empire. The second prince had multiple times come to ask for Xiana's hand in marriage, but was always rejected by the Duke of Xianyu. For one, Xiana was still not of age then. Also, the second prince was of questionable character. Today, he had betrothed Xiana to someone else, and he hoped that the second prince would behave himself. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 35. After muttering to himself for a good while, the Duke of Xianyu was more annoyed. With the court in chaos, many dukes secretly support their own favored princes, and I am the only duke staying out of it, but I'm afraid that won't last for long. The Duke of Xianyu said, his heart heavy with worry. Since ancient times, in the struggle for imperial power, it was difficult for those in the middle ground to meet a good end. The Duke of Xianyu was not keen on power, but the Xianyu prefecture was adjacent to the imperial city in the imperial capital. Soldiers could storm the imperial city in 10 days. Such a trusted and close strategic location, how could the princes not view him as a thorn in their sides? It would be hard for him to stay out of it. In recent years, with His Majesty's health increasingly weakening, the three princes' overt competition and struggle for power was becoming more intense. A few months ago, the Duke of Xuanhuan, who threw in his lot with the third prince, was charged with the crime of inciting conspiracy, and he beheaded after all his possessions were seized and confiscated. In fact, the first prince and second prince joined forces to suppress the third prince. Among the three princes, the third prince, humble and respectful of talent, was very popular, resourceful and strategic, surpassing his two brothers. But he was born of a concubine without any foundation in the court, so it was well within reason that his two brothers would join forces against him. The Duke of Xianyu already smelled the blood and chaos in the air that came with the succession of a dynasty. As a duke, it was difficult to evade. His only hope was not to implicate Xiana and Su Yu. At that moment, an old man entered through the door. Wearing a woven straw raincoat, his face had a dull expression and behaved furtively. He was Senior King, the one who secretly protected the young princess that day. You're back, Senior King. The Duke of Xianyu suddenly got up, and somewhat courteously asked, how is the investigation of the situation? Senior King rasped. The Duke's deduction was quite right. The servants and guards are moving about all over the Xianyu prefecture. The young princess's past may have already been divulged. I hope the Duke can make some early arrangements. The Duke of Xianyu looked somber and was silent for quite a while. I know. Senior King nodded without expression, and retreated back into the shadows like a ghost. Su Yu was in seclusion in the arena, where he was putting the old man's one finger point to use. He comprehended it somewhat. Opening up Purple Star Thunderbolt again, he suddenly felt much more enlightened. What was once extremely indecipherable and cryptic script had become simple and easy to understand. Can it be that since I can comprehend the holy decree, some cryptic and mystifying object is now simple and clear? Su Yu delighted, secretly grateful for the one finger point of the old man in the mural. 10 days passed by. Su Yu suddenly opened his eyes and threw a punch without any warning. Something amazing happened. An unexpected weak spark of violet thunder appeared within the fist. Faint wisps of a burning smell wafted through the air, caused by the thunder. Su Yu beamed. After 10 days and nights of cultivation, he finally reached the entry level. Although it was not even at the lower class level, after combining with it the holy decree, he could actually condense a spark of thunder. Thunder. What a formidable power of nature. Merely possessing a spark of thunder was terrifying. Purple Star Thunderbolt, exactly which level of cultivation technique does it belong to? It's already so scary, even at entry level. Su Yu was utterly puzzled. What also made Su Yu happy was the huge progress in Tempest. With Tempest cultivated to stage 3 lower class, one leg could produce snow and wind at the same time. An astonishingly formidable power, greatly surpassing before. Furthermore, with the Duke's rare medicinal plants, first-class cultivation room, and personal guidance, his cultivation base had unconsciously advanced to level 4 upper tier. A full 10 days, and a massive breakthrough. Now, even without using the ray of diabolic light, he could easily defeat the level 4 peak Jiang Zishi. He was also assured that he could beat Xiao Li of the 10 great demon students. Come over, there are guests arriving from the imperial capital. You and Xuanhuan will make an appearance together for the welcome. The Duke of Xuanhuan arrived with a smile just as he came out of his seclusion, assessed Su Yu with a quick look, and found that his vital spirit essence was different from earlier. He was immeasurably gratified to know that his strength had progressed. Su Yu's heart warmed hearing the name Yu. The Duke of Xuanhuan had already regarded him as a real son. During those 10 days, whether it was resources for the cultivation, personal guidance, or life experience, all were offered as if Su Yu was his own son. The Duke of Xuanhuan had been without a son in his entire life, and somewhat saw Su Yu as a son to make up for his regret in life. Su Yu of the past had been in business his whole life, accustomed to the vicious world. When he encountered an elder such as the Duke of Xuanhuan, he was touched. Arriving at this strange other world, alone and impoverished, no family or friends, the Duke of Xuanhuan gave him a close familial feeling. Very well, my father-in-law. Su Yu answered energetically. Being addressed as father-in-law filled the Duke of Xuanhuan with happiness and satisfaction. Looking at Su Yu from a distance, he thought to himself, you and Xuanhuan must live well. When he came to the assembly hall, the young princess was dressed in a pink skirt, with her exquisite and lovely small face, all made up, adorable and lovable. Hey, degenerate. The young princess wrinkled her exquisite nose. My wretched father, marrying me off to you. I want to run away, escape this marriage. Brandishing an elegant fist, the young princess protested. She was very petite, her head only up to Su Yu's chest. Su Yu crouched down with a light smile, so that his line of sight was level with the young princess's, as a show of respect. Conversing with her face-to-face for the first time, Su Yu sincerely said, with a light smile, young princess, many thanks for your kindness in pleading for leniency on that day. The young princess's big, bright eyes blinked. What plea of leniency? Su Yu said with a smile, the princess's body is protected by 1,000-member army, how can a stranger be allowed to sully you? If it were any other princess, I think, once they caught me, they would have quickly gotten rid of me to preserve their reputation. Instead, you twice pleaded for leniency from the Duke. I, Su Yu, will remember that with gratitude in my heart. Su Yu came close to death at the arena that day. The young princess had twice asked the Duke to stop and spare his life. Although she was unruly, her nature was pure and good. The majority of the princesses in high positions had long been influenced by power, and would be indifferent about the life of a stranger. Su Yu knew, without a doubt, if he had saved another princess on that day, they would kill him without mercy, to protect their reputation. Only the young princess of Xuanhuan did not do so. After hearing what was said, the young princess was secretly pleased with herself. At least he has a conscience. I am Queen Xuanhuan. How can other princesses compare to me? With Xuanhuan's slim jade white hands clasped behind her back and her chin raised, like a proud little peacock, she muttered, count your lucky stars. As a generous princess, I'll forgive you. Let's go. We have guests to welcome and the 3 princes have arrived. Su Yu secretly felt tender affection for her. Her temperament was childlike, any praise would cause her happiness. All 3 princes came. Su Yu was in awe. Such a big empire like Fenglan, the 3 princes, with their tremendous power and influence, could determine the fate of millions of people. Ordinary people might revere before royalty, but Su Yu came from another world. He remained calm and collected. He stood with his hands behind back, his clothes fluttering in the air, his ink-black hair swaying, and his eyes gleaming with wisdom. Xuanhuan skipped and hopped while leading the way. Her small mouth hummed a pleasant tune, and she occasionally turned her head around to look back at Su Yu, her pointed little chin nodding a little from time to time. Don't embarrass me, Xuanhuan fiercely warned, brandishing her elegant fist. Su Yu smiled without a word, and stepped forward to walk beside her. Su Yu's heart was filled with warmth when he felt Xiana's vivacity and recalled the Duke's devotion and generosity. Perhaps, this was his home in this other world. After a short while, Su Yu and Xiana stood outside the assembly hall. One was dainty and lovely. The other was in high spirits with a graceful bearing beyond compare. The first prince. The second prince. The third prince. The servant outside the door loudly announced the arrival of the guests. The intermittent sound of footsteps traveled across the courtyard to the assembly hall. The three powerful and influential princes in the courtyard resembled each other in appearance, their imperial dignity emanating in all directions. With a face that betrayed no feelings, the first prince, the most imperial-looking, had sharp penetrating eyes, making it difficult for anyone to look at him face to face. The second prince, with his long and narrow eyes, thin lips, curled the corners of his mouth as if to smile, and had a somewhat sinister feel to him. Although his appearance was ordinary, the third prince's manner was the most refined. The smile on his face was like the spring breeze and his eyes flashed with glimpses of wisdom. My imperial elder brothers, you came. Xiana missed you so much. Xiana's silky black eyes looked mischievous. She giggled as she ran towards them, sweetly yelling to them. The first prince's eyes managed to produce a rare hint of smile. He tilted his head to look at the bodyguard following close behind. Young princess, this is the cloud dress that I, the first prince, prepared for you. Impervious to water and fire, protected from the elements, guaranteed to be bright forever, it's priceless. The bodyguard offered it with both hands. Xiana smiled as she took it. The second prince's pair of long and narrow eyes covertly assessed Xiana with a look. He took a hairpin from his chest pocket and beamed from ear to ear. This hairpin is an imperial tribute. I, imperial elder brother, specially prepared it for you. Wearing it on top of your head can nourish your inner strength and increase your cultivation base. Xiana extended a jade-like hand and took it with satisfaction. Su Yu raised his eyebrows. He was accustomed to seeing all sorts of people and could see through all kinds. He could read the other person's mind with just an expression in the person's eyes. There was something fishy about this second prince's expression. He seemed to have improper thoughts about the young princess. I could not tolerate you taking advantage of my betrothed. Su Yu secretly kept the second prince in mind. The third prince smiled wryly. Xiana, as you know, I, your imperial elder brother, am without resources. I have no treasure that you can take, so I can only bring you this. Xiana pouted her small mouth until she discovered, in the third prince's hands, a novel and an odd 9-beaded chain lock. Instantly beaming with joy, she seized the trinket on the spot and fiddled with it. As it turned out, Xiana's clever act of obedient behavior was to extract greeting gifts from the three imperial elder brothers. Su Yu's eyes gleamed. He could roughly gauge the three princes' characters judging by their treasures. Among the three princes, the first prince was domineering, extravagant, and presented the most expensive gift. The second prince was crafty. He knew that the young princess just wanted to have fun and did not like to cultivate, so he presented the gift of a hairpin which could voluntarily refine her inner strength when worn. The third prince was the one Su Yu admired the most, but also most guarded against. Compared to the other princes, he was the most shrewd and sophisticated. Of the three gifts that the young princess received, the first two pieces of considerable worth elicited average reactions from the young princess. But the last piece of mediocre worth was the one the young princess favored the most. Clearly, the third prince's ability to capture the hearts of people was far superior to his two elder brothers. The second prince's eyes flashed and fell upon Su Yu. Clad in purple, with a breezy manner, supple black hair, a fine face adorned with jade cap, he was like a handsome celestial immortal. Elegance and calm radiated from deep inside him. He could easily hold his own in front of the three princes. You are the Duke's son-in-law, Xiana's betrothed. The second prince's tone was flat, but there was a sense of aloof scrutiny, vaguely hostile.